Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is now 7 p.m. and we are live online.
Thank you. Good evening. This is City Council Workshop. This is just where the council will be discussing the agenda items and no public comments. And we'll start with roll call. I see Molly and Jeff and Amber and Paloma and George and myself, and the mayor is online. Hello, Lee.
Hey.
And Chris, our city administrator, Chris White. And do we have anybody else online?
Good evening, Pam. Christian Gates with Keenan Bean City Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Christian.
And Natalie Quinn with KRC.
Thanks, Natalie. Nice seeing you both. All right, we will start with our first workshop agenda item of proposed local law concerning residential uses in the R15 zoning district. And Natalie and Christian will introduce this item.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, Christian, I don't know if you want to run through the package of materials and the memo that Keenan Bean put out. I think the one thing that I'll jump in and share when we get to the point of sharing maps is I do have some of the transit line information that was requested at the last meeting that I can share as well with what you provided, Christian.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. So our office prepared the local law. Originally at the council's workshop meeting last week, there was a discussion on how to best define these areas which would be eligible. There was a discussion originally on expanding the T district, and then that was tabled for adding some certain limited residential uses within the existing R15 district within a close proximity of Central Main Street. This would legalize several non-conforming uses that have existed there, as well as open up some more housing availability should property owners want to do so. When we were reviewing the proposed local law and drafting it, we went with definitions for where this permitted use would be as outlined by certain major roads within the city. So this would amend the schedule of uses to add a footnote which provides that one family attached and detached, those are commonly townhouses, as well as two family dwellings and then artist live workspaces will be permitted in the R15 district only if such parcel is located north of Roundabout, south of Verplank, east of South Avenue, aka Route 9D, as well as west of Fishkill Teller Avenue. So as long as the property is within the R15 zoning district and within those perimeters of those roads, it would be eligible for these 3 additional residential uses. And the local law also provides a carve out to the non-conforming uses. There's currently 30 non-conforming multifamily dwellings within the R15. And so if those non-conforming multifamily buildings are destroyed by more than 50%, the owners cannot continue that use. They would then need to convert it to a permitted use. So this local law would also provide a limited carve out with several requirements in order for that property owner to continue the use, the non-conforming use. Primarily, it must be a non-conforming structure that is registered with the city. That is a current requirement. It must be a multifamily dwelling. The reconstruction must be in kind so that there's no increases to any other types of dimensional non-conformities such as lot lines or height or possibly density or parking. And the reconstruction will also be subject to planning board approval with a site plan. And then the applicant must submit an application to the planning board for approval within 1 year of the date of destruction. That is in an effort to give them time to work out with their insurance and get plans developed and be able to move it forward. Usually when there's a total casualty loss, it's some time before the owner can really move forward with reconstructing.
Christian, to that last point, can you say a little bit more about why a year seemed like the right time limit?
Yeah, a year seemed like a good time frame. It is twice as long as someone whose property is destroyed by 50% or less. The approval process itself can take some time. So when a property is destroyed, obviously the immediate concerns will be life and safety, making sure that the property owner, if they need to demolish the existing building and remove all the materials there, that could take a couple months. It could then take a couple months to work through the insurance process, and then it will take possibly a few months in order for them to work with their design professionals in order to put together a site plan application, as well as the materials needed for that. There's usually several sheets that go into various details, as well as architecture and things like that. A longer period of time is probably not necessary, although we could discuss it, because the building will need to be dimensionally in kind reconstruction. There shouldn't be a lot of new building that occurs. It's really just a reconstruction.
Great, thank you.
Would it be something that could be built in, that they could get extensions if they're showing that they're progressing? I'm just thinking like with the COVID timeframe when it was hard to get items to be able to build. And I know people don't always move so quickly.
Yeah, so this requirement only requires a bona fide application to be submitted and then diligently pursued. So they don't actually need to commence construction within that 1 year time frame. We could revise it so that construction does commence, but 1 year for a total casualty event might be a little quick pace, especially since there will be some aspects of just the mere application and financials that are out of the property owner's hands, namely with insurance.
Yeah, given everything that you described, Christian, I'm not feeling like 1 year is too much time. If anything, I was like, oh, do we want to have it be longer? But I feel like I don't have enough data to pick another time period that would be more appropriate. So I feel like 1 year for the purpose of our attempting this adjustment at all feels like the right time to start with, and we can get feedback. And we might even, I assume this has to go through public hearing, we might get feedback from people who have experienced this, whether or not they could or couldn't rebuild, just have some thoughts about how long it takes after a fire to actually get the clearance to build. I don't feel like I need to propose a different time frame at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 1 year time frame was also selected because that mirrors the time frame if someone abandons or stops their non-conforming use for 1 year, they're not entitled to keep that non-conforming use. So if someone has right now, if they have a multifamily dwelling, it's totally vacant, there's no one there, and then a year and a half goes by and they try to restart that non-conforming use, they would be barred under the code as well. And so the 1 year aligns with that time frame as well.
And Christian, could you remind me of what the obligation a property owner has to sort of board up or otherwise make a building that has been destroyed, safe for neighbors as well? Yeah.
First, there's usually a securing of the site that can involve the installation of a fence. That can also involve boarding up and securing the property. That's usually handled through the building department and making sure that a property is not what's called an attractive nuisance or a danger to nearing properties. There might be a circumstance where it's left, if it is destroyed more than 50%, but it doesn't collapse on its own, it may need to be temporarily supports put in place, windows boarded, fencing, and then totally demolished. So it is somewhat dependent on the nature of the destruction, but typically it involves fencing, boarding up windows, possible supports in place in order to keep it secure.
I have a question just kind of off of what I said before. With 1 year with the bona fide and complete application, what happens if they do that they don't move further along, is there a time limit where that would expire and they couldn't get the non-conforming?
So there is no set time frame in the proposed draft. It uses the term diligently pursued. That is the same language that is used when there is a 50% or less destruction. Typically that involves, making appearances at meetings, continuing to make appearances, modifying your application in response to planning board comments or professional consultant comments. If an applicant is appearing to basically let the application pend, typically there's a conversation with that applicant saying you need to continue prosecuting your application, and depending on the circumstances and possibly what the excuse might be, eventually it could be removed from there and they would then lose it. So there is no, in the draft, a hard and fast deadline, and it mirrors the language currently used.
Okay. Now, the one for this area, I don't think it applies, but when I was thinking about this, the recent fire and construction on Wolcott at Teller, would that be something that could have, based on this law here, it could just be built as it previously had been? I don't know if that was...
So I did not handle that matter. That was handled by, I believe, other attorneys in our office, but I'd be happy to discuss with them and gather their input for the council's next meeting on this, which will be the 15th, so we can report back. I just unfortunately am not as familiar with that process, with that specific house.
Are you asking, Pam, if it would be covered under this proposal, or if it was covered, is that an example of what could be rebuilt?
Yeah, would it have been covered if that situation happened here with this law, or was there it might have been saying, well, they weren't even conforming to what they had, I would like to have some background, because I know there was a lot of pushback of rebuilding that.
Yeah, I think in particular, because that's not north of Rombout, it wouldn't count for this particular
understand that.
proposal, but you're more wondering just in general if something isn't registered as official non-conforming.
Exactly.
Okay.
South
Yeah.
of Roundabout? Is it?
North of
North for the
Roosevelt.
purpose of this, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
that
So
property is
was,
south.
and I
Yeah.
believe that property was either a single-room occupancy or it had been interpreted to be apartments. So it was multifamily, now it's being rebuilt as a one-family. Because it
Right,
reverted to the underlying zoning.
But if it was, say, in this area, it could have been built back what it was.
If it was multifamily, then yes.
Yeah, if it was multifamily.
If it was classed as that, I assume. But we can wait till Christian
Yeah,
confirms.
and I'm interested in that interpretation too, because my understanding is that property was a single-room occupancy, and I don't think that use is permitted, so maybe just the clarification on the permitted uses. I think it's a good question. We're obviously not going to answer it right now.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this looks fine. By the way, the zoning on the SRO at Teller and 9D was R110. So obviously it doesn't apply to what we're doing here, even if it were extended.
I'm not
only question I have,
100%
this looks-
hearing you clearly, Lee.
Oh, is this better?
Yeah. Can
It's
you
better?
just
Okay.
repeat what you had said on that?
Yeah. The lot on the corner of Sargent and 9D is R110, by the way, just, FYI. The only question I have, this looks right, it seems consistent with what council discussed. I just note that on the south side of Rombout, there's an apartment building where the old Beacon Academy used to be. It's on the south side, so I don't think that's included in here. On West Center Street, there are some two families that were built as two families. On 9D on the north side, there's a couple of single families that were converted to two. And then I note on the on the other side of the creek, the east side of Fishkill Creek, most of the units on East Main until you reach Washington Avenue are 2, 3, 4 family, and there's a few of those in Spring Valley. So I'm just curious. I'm happy for us to say, let's move forward with this and we'll pick up that next, but we might want to think about those as well.
Yeah, I can jump in maybe a little bit and talk about kind of the process behind this and the mapping work that was done. Maybe that'll help Lee give a little bit of background to the conversation. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So you should all have in your package this image. This is kind of the description of what is currently in the proposed local law, right, of showing these areas kind of based on roads. Based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting, we did initially start with doing an analysis based on kind of a certain distance from the center line of Main Street. So this is what was captured if we were doing a 1,000-foot buffer from the center line of Main Street. And as you can see, like, it doesn't catch everything north of Rombout in some places, and then it catches beyond that in other places. And it's just a little bit inconsistent, and then it does catch part of the district across. So that's why I think ultimately we went with this, that was a little bit cleaner in terms of what properties fall within and which ones do not. So, and then Lee, to your comment, I'll let the council respond to this as well. I think what we heard at the last meeting was that this is almost being treated a little bit like a first step kind of test. So I do agree that based on the land use map, we are missing, obviously based on this, we are missing some existing, potentially 2 families outside of the boundary that we're looking at. But I think, Christian, with the provision for the properties that are demolished more than 50%, that applies to 2-family as well as multifamily in the R15, the entire R15.
So the destruction carve out would apply to any multifamily in the R15 zoning district. So not just where the council's considering expanding these residential uses, it would be any R15 property, but only multifamily. So it would not cover 2-family that are in other R15 districts or any other R1 districts.
Okay. So that, I mean, I guess that might be something worth discussing for that provision, why that provision would apply only to the multifamily and not to the existing 2-family in the remainder of the R15 district, right? I mean, I think that would capture some of what Lee was talking about that's not being captured by this, permitted by right provision, but instead could be captured, at least for the existing ones, could be captured under that if we expand that to be both 2-family as well as multifamily.
That sounds great. I really appreciate the explanation. Yeah, I think that is the one question, which is whether we might want that carve out to also apply to 2s in the R15 outside of the shaded area, right?
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think that part of the goal that we're trying to achieve here is maintaining some of the housing stock that exists. So I would lean towards allowing that carve out for, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the use table. I'm trying to scroll to the use table really quick. So for the for the 1-family attached, semi-detached, 2-family, I think that does kind of make sense. I don't know what other people think.
I agree. In the grounding that you shared, Amber, of wanting to bring some of our existing multifamilies into compliance.
Yeah, I agree as well, and I'm happy to expand the, allowing 2 families as well as 1 families and multi-families. But I do like the 1,000-foot, the perimeters defined by the blocks, and limiting it to that right now, and revisiting this to see if we would want to apply it throughout the R15 in the future.
So currently, what we just said, that's how it's written, but we'd have to add in 2-family.
Correct.
Yes, I guess for the purposes of our code, multifamily is not inclusive of two-family.
Right, okay.
Yeah, if the council would like to extend, to add two-family to the destruction carve-out, we could add that. And it would presently apply to any two-family anywhere in the R15 district, unless we further refined the exception.
I would like to go that direction.
Yes, agreed.
I would also.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any comments or?
I had
More
one comment
information?
about the Rombout Avenue border, and again, not wanting the perfect to be the enemy of the good. The way that it's currently written, if we pass this, moving forward, new two families could be built on the north side of Rombout Avenue, but could not be built on the south side as of right. Is that an accurate assessment of what this new law, if we passed it, would mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it
Yes,
possible
so
to-
any properties that front and are north of Rombout, even if they front on it, would be eligible. But any of the properties on the southern side, even though they're facing north, would not.
Is there any reason why we haven't included those?
Just really for keeping it limited to a defined area. We would need to do additional revisions and edits, and then we would need to work through it to make sure that it's interpreted uniformly and clear enough for applicants and the building department to apply.
Yeah, it would make sense to me to adjust that to fronting on Rombout.
Yeah.
I used to live on Rombout, and so I'm somewhat familiar with that stretch of street, and there aren't any major constructions that I'm aware of that wouldn't make sense to be allowed into this new district. Or not district, but, this new use table.
Yeah, I would agree. Just thinking of that as sort of as a singular streetscape, I think it makes sense. And I appreciate, Christian, that wording that in a way that can be interpreted accurately going forward is more of an art for you and Natalie to figure out. So I appreciate that extra bit of work. And it means that we need, we'll have to bring it back to discuss again before we can bring it to the public for their thoughts, or bring it officially to the public. Obviously, we might hear from them next week if they so choose, but.
So I would ask, is there a reason, and then, I feel like this is a little bit Pandora's box, but is there a reason you're thinking that just for Rombout and not for the other streets?
You mean like why not Verplank?
Yeah.
As well?
Is there something about I'm just curious about why.
I think the other side of Verplank is mostly actually not R15, which
Okay.
means that to me, it seems to be the city, whether or not we currently as the council agree, but there seems to have been a decision about zoning about the north side of Verplank that I'm not feeling like we need to get into
Okay.
right now. And then Teller, if we were going, actually interestingly, if we were going farther north along Teller, I would have the same thought. The fact that it stops at Verplank, there's actually not a lot on what would be the east side of Teller to make me feel like it makes sense. And then sort of similar with North Avenue, there's not a lot on the other side, sort of between essentially Rombout and Verplank for me to feel too strongly about the east and west sides, but it was really Rombout that struck me, like what Paloma was saying, to live across it and have just because you happen to be on the north side of the street, that we want to
Yeah.
feel like a cohesive community. You can build one thing on this side, but on the other, just felt a little off.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I guess I would, now that we've opened this discussion, I agree, Molly, with your assessment of Verplank, but I am looking again at Teller, which to me, at least in some of these sections, similarly to Rombout, feels like it was built on both sides.
So
Yeah, there is
with-
one property. Yeah, go ahead, sorry, Christian.
Yeah, I was going to say with Teller, Teller then quickly, once we're at Rombout and you're going north on Fishkill Teller, it quickly turns into a couple at least two parcels that are in the transitional district, a few more parcels in the transitional district, the CMS. There is an RD5, few parcels, and then it would not actually affect, I think, more than a parcel or two along Fishkill Teller.
Right.
And then yeah, with the R17.5 district, that starts at about west of North Cedar Street, all the way past Duchess Terrace.
I'm okay with the map as is, because I think we're viewing this as a starting point.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to do the south side of Rombout, but I don't feel super strongly about the other borders.
So who else would want
Yeah, I
where
would
it's
go for that.
facing Rombout? And I guess that would have to be defined where it's between South Ave and
Teller?
Teller.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that if Christian feels like they can craft the language to Molly's earlier point in a way that makes it clear for people and for the building and planning department to apply.
And for the purpose of clarity for Christian, do we have an opinion about whether we want the property to have to be abutting Rombout or address on Rombout? Because you will have some corner lots that will not actually have an address on Rombout.
And some side lots. It gets a little
Yeah.
funky near west of James Street.
Well,
Do
I would
we-
say facing should be the front.
Fronting?
Fronting.
Yeah.
So is fronting kind of an understood definition in terms of how a lot faces, Christian?
Yeah, where the main access to and from the property is there, or just for clarity, the council, even if it is touching Rombout, it would apply. So only if the access to the property is fronting on Rombout, or as long as essentially one of the lot lines touches Rombout.
I think
I would say
fronting.
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 Yeah, fronting.
Otherwise you're getting into too many little.
Yeah, like thinking about
Cases.
those three houses that are on Rombout and South Avenue, those are all built as basically like little row houses, and it would be weird if the one on the corner somehow got to be something totally different.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Are we ready to move forward? Okay. All right. Then-
Oh, wait, just one question for Natalie. I thought you'd mentioned that you added in the transit, and I'm not sure which map that is, Natalie?
Yeah, I didn't, we didn't add it, we didn't have the opportunity to add it in,
Oh,
but I
okay.
can share real quick just to, kind of, there's three lines, and I think, the biggest takeaway from this is that the council is going in the right direction and what they're looking at in terms of increasing, softly increasing housing density around available public transit, right? So you have three lines that kind of run through Beacon, specifically on Main Street. I have to turn off F and G so that you can see the B line, right, that runs and then kind of dips south to kind of cover this portion of Roundabout that we're talking about now. And then you can see F also serves that. And then for future, I think if we do want to start talking about adding in potentially the R15 across the creek, that's also, served by the G line here. So I think we are focused on the area that is well served by transit and walkable in terms of where the council is looking to expand these uses. So I think it was a good exercise, but I think we're definitely on the track of targeting those areas for higher density.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, we have reappointment of Kathy Martin to the position of tax assessor, and Chris is going to discuss that.
Yes, so we have had Kathy Martin as our tax assessor for 19 years. Her current term is expiring at the end of this month, and we would like to renew her appointment for another 6-year term. Some of you know we're in a shared services agreement with the town of East Fishkill, whereby we get 30% of Kathy's time and they get 70%, and we share the cost on that basis. She's been very good in the years that I've been here in helping to reduce the number of tax cert challenges that we have and the small claims that we face. I think the last 2 or 3 years she's come to council and helped kind of make more transparent our process of how we assess and how that impacts the taxes. I know when we updated recently the income for the senior exemptions, she and her deputy Sylvia were very proactive in reaching out to the seniors and helping them navigate that. So I have no hesitation about recommending that she be extended for another 6 years, and I know that the town of East Fishkill will be doing a similar vote in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly about the senior, and I think it was also disabled individuals, I think Kathy was also proactive in bringing the adjustment of that to us, if I
Yes.
remember correctly, which I really appreciated. So I certainly don't have any hesitation in having her continue, and I think she's a really wonderful resource. And I think the addition of having her come to the council and kind of explain the assessment process, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, has been a real benefit. So,
And she's more than willing to do it, so I'm
yeah, really, really appreciate everything she does.
Yeah, I agree in appreciating her proactive communication, both in terms of policy recommendations to the council and the public education that she does with her work. I know that she's been doing this with us for 19 years, but I think for the public record, I think it would be great if she could include a resume.
we'll update that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody's good with that, with reappointing Kathy Martin? All right, we will move forward. The next item is appointment of Brandon Travis to the position of Water and Sewer Maintenance Helper, and Chris is also going to discuss that.
Yes, so this proposed appointment backfills the position from which someone left when we promoted them recently. Brandon Travis is somebody that's known to the city. He's been a volunteer firefighter since at least 2016. And many of you may have seen him at the opening of the fire station. He was part of the color guard. And he has experience as a landscaper. He's actually worked on projects in the city with involving concrete, and which is a good fit for the sewer department because they're doing a lot of work in the roads. The superintendent of sewer and waters has interviewed them with his top assistant and Sarah, and recommended him for appointment.
Great.
Yeah,
It's a
he
great
seems like a
comment.
good fit.
And we're excited because he's also a Beacon resident. And we've been able to hire more Beacon residents lately, which is something that we're trying to do.
Yeah, it was really nice to see his volunteer firefighter work, and then also that he's a Beacon resident, so that's wonderful that that worked out.
Cool.
I like that he has extremely good people skills. And as well as his range of qualifications around his hard skills.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, we'll move forward from there. The next one is proposed local law concerning a partial property tax exemption for accessory apartments, which Christian is going to introduce that.
Thank you. So tonight, the council has a proposed local law which would grant a partial real property exemption to accessory apartments, or commonly referred to as ADUs, accessory dwelling units. The city was specifically requested by the Hudson River Housing as well as the New York State Homes and Community Renewal Agency to adopt a local law pursuant to Real Property Tax Law 421F. That is what we have prepared. The exemption would only apply to existing buildings that are at least 5 years old and converted into an accessory apartment after the effective date of the local law. So for example, if someone converted a basement into an accessory apartment, they would be eligible. If they converted an existing garage or barn into an accessory apartment, they would be eligible. But if they have a newly constructed accessory apartment in a new building or home, they would not be eligible for the exemption. Otherwise, that is a part of the state enabling law that can't be modified. There are some other requirements as well, such as the value of the reconstruction or improvements must exceed $3,000. Here, it would only be limited to accessory apartments. There would be no other type of construction that it would be eligible for. And essentially what this local law would do would allow owners to defer increased property taxes and offset increased property taxes caused by the increase in market value attributable to the creation of the accessory apartment. So the city of Beacon was accepted as one of the New York State ADU +1 program recipients. And so this is a part of that process. Again, Hudson River Housing and New York State Homes and Community Renewal Agency specifically requested that this provision be adopted. And so other forms of construction would not be eligible. The partial exemption is capped at $80,000 of the increase in market value. It also slowly decreases over a period of 8 years. So for the first year after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, that additional taxable value attributable to the new accessory apartment or the conversion into it would be wholly exempt from property taxes. So if the ADU causes a $20,000 increase to a property that's taxed at $100,000, the property owner would still be taxed at $100,000. That extra amount would not be taxable. The following year, it would decrease by 12.5% for the remaining 7 years until it reaches zero. The applications are due to the city assessor's office each year on March 1st. That is the same with most all property tax exemptions.
And so Christian, I have a couple of questions, but the first one is, in the example you just gave, we can use that same one. Say the increased value was $100,000, we would still fully assess that $20,000 and $80,000 would be on the sliding scale for a partial exemption. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then, as a clarification, I think when you kicked this off, you were saying that this would apply only to existing accessory dwelling units, not something new that gets built under the +1 program. I'm not sure I caught that correctly.
So there are two kind of aspects to this. So it would not apply to any accessory apartments that were constructed before the effective date of the local law. And it would also not apply to any accessory apartment that is constructed or converted in a building that is less than 5 years old. If someone has a brand new built like home, a single family home, and then they're also simultaneously adding an accessory apartment as part of their project, they would not be eligible for this.
Okay, thank you. I did not hear that correctly, so appreciate the clarification.
And Christian, these exemptions, they would travel with the property as opposed to the owners that initially applied for them?
It only applies to the owner. So if the property is sold to a third party, it would not apply. However, if the property is transferred to an heir of that person, they could still be eligible.
Okay, so but if the property was sold, it would not go to the new owner?
It would not go to the new owner, that's correct.
Thank you.
Is there an income eligibility requirement for this? I didn't see it, but I wanted to confirm.
Under this exemption, there's no income eligibility cap.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Could we put an income eligibility cap on it, or would that be preempted?
That would be preempted. The state enabling law, it only gives the city council a few areas of ability to legislate further in. One of them is the council could reduce that $80,000 cap to no less than $5,000. It could also alter the staggered exemption rates, and then it can limit it to this type of a form of reconstruction. Here, it's being limited to an accessory apartment in order so that applicants for the ADU Plus program can include this with their application.
Christian, what kind of guidance could someone look for to get a sense of what the increase in value might be on their property for putting an ADU on? I know it's varies and by location and from municipality to municipality, but is there any guidance for someone? Is it a real estate evaluation by comparable property analysis?
I believe that would be the most accurate. Nothing currently is coming to mind that would give someone a real sense of how much their property will be increased. I think it'll mainly depend on market conditions as well as the size of the accessory apartment, probably the age of the existing home, their location in the city. There's a lot of factors, and unfortunately, I'm not aware of any concrete guidance.
Is that something that, is that work that we could ask Kathy Martin to do, to be a resource for people to estimate what their new assessment might be?
Well,
Is that an overstep of her responsibilities?
yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if Kathy says exactly what Christian said. But the thing to know is whatever that number is, unless it exceeds $80,000, it's not going to be included in their taxes. So what they should know is anything up to the 80 is not in the first year, and then it comes in, 12.5% at a time. I think that's useful. I think the other thing to note is it is probably going to be, and Kathy can tell you this, it's probably going to be a function of what the rental rates are for an ADU and on average across the city.
So I think I didn't quite catch the last thing you said, Lee.
Because it's an accessory unit, meaning it's not, your home, and it's being rented out. So commercial property tends to be valued at the rental rate as opposed to something else. And so I would think that she would say that, but we can certainly ask her that. But I don't think she would hazard a guess as to what the assessments would be.
Right, not everybody will be renting their ADUs, but I understand the principle of what you're saying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if you say I'm doing this for my mother-in-law or parent or whatever, the rent. What's your rent? $0. It's still going to be an assessment as if it were rentable, right, at the market rate for Beacon for those types of units. But again, Kathy can give you.
One question that I was just in the overview, not the law, it was saying the example was in 2024, $100,000, and then it's assessed in 2025, it goes up to 25,000. So that's the tax base exemption. But it's not going to adjust for the increase, if we all, this year, I can't remember what that standard percentage was of our increase. I guess where I'm confused is it's saying 2 different years, which typically we increase lately. So I would think the increase that's the average for the city would not be included in that tax base exemption.
So the exemption base looks at the change in the market value, and if there is a change in assessment of 15% or more as certified, so for the annual change in the city of Beacon's assessment of 15% or more, the exemption base is then multiplied by a fraction. So it gets a little bit mathematical there, but the local law does provide for a way if there's an overall change in basically how properties are assessed to help account for that so that it can be then translated into this partial exemption.
Okay. And then it was talking about a footnote, if the values change by 15% or more of the assessment value, it was saying it would increase or decrease that tax base exemption by that much. Is that how I'm reading that?
it would then change, yes, the exemption base is then going to be multiplied by a fraction where the denominator is the total assessed value of the parcel and the denominator on the current final assessment roll, and the denominator is the total assessed value on the immediately preceding final assessment roll. So this mathematical and use of fractions is in an effort to recalculate what that exemption base should be to account for that increase of 15% or more in the overall taxable base.
Could it account for a decrease?
I don't believe so. Or it might just be a change. I believe actually,
I think it said
change. It would account for a swing either way, a change of increase or a change in decrease.
Okay.
And I believe the goal of those are all set by New York State. So the city can't change how the exemption base is calculated or the 15% rule. But my understanding is that those are intended to prevent a shock to the taxable overall status of properties throughout the city.
Okay. I can relate to that. I was here when our assessments all went down quite a bit. And so one other question I had was the 80,000 and the 3,000, that's set by the state?
So the 80,000, the city can't increase it beyond 80,000. It could lower that to 5,000, which would only be someone only receives an exemption of $5,000 on the increase in market value. With the $3,000, that is something that cannot be changed, where the property owner has to basically invest $3,000 into, at least $3,000 into the creation of the accessory apartment.
Okay, so what you're saying, we could adjust that $80,000 maximum eligible for exemption?
Yes, it can be. Right now it's set at the highest level of exemption. It could be lowered all the way down to 5,000.
Christian, can you give some background of how those numbers were come to?
So the local law is drafted to use the default amounts set forth in the state enabling law. And the reason why is because we wanted to make sure that Hudson River Housing, New York State Homes and Community Renewal, as well as applicants for the ADU +1 program are able to, applicants need to be able to show and demonstrate that the community here, Beacon, has committed to facilitating this property tax exemption. And so this was the most straightforward manner of doing it, adopting the default exemption levels.
Sorry, that is helpful information, Christian, but I was actually asking how the state came up with those numbers in the enabling law, if you have any of that info.
I do not have that information presently, and I'm not entirely certain all state legislation will have that. We can certainly look to see if there's any additional legislative materials that would give an insight into where the state came up with those numbers.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for me in doing due diligence on considering what the right amount is, since the state gave us an option to choose.
Anybody else, how they feel on that?
I agree with Paloma. I think it's, if there's an understanding that we can gain of how 80,000 was picked, like, that's very helpful. I don't have any other, I asked my questions at this point, so.
Yeah.
I'm okay the way it is. My impression is that the 80,000 was set as a maximum that you would want to offer as an abatement to the assessment. And I'm okay at what the maximum is for this. And it goes away over 8 years. And so, I think that's a reasonable approach. That's the maximum. I'm okay with it.
I'm not saying I'm not okay with it. I just think it would be helpful to understand why that number, like, if we pulled it out of a hat, fine. But if there's some information behind it that can just help us understand better, I think that would be helpful. I don't have an opinion on whether it's the right number or not.
Yeah, my sense of it would be that it's reflecting, sort of a kind of an average cost, or at least a fraction of the cost of the construction for creating the ADU. Some could be very inexpensive because, you're just adding a door, you've already got a door, something like that. But I think it's sort of reflecting that. I think down where we are, it won't be the amount that you need to do it, but it sets a limit. So I think that's okay. If the council wants to research some more, that's great. No problem.
I think I would agree to just find out the reasoning why.
Okay.
Yeah, and if the answer is, as you are suggesting, Lee, that it is representative of some average of the cost of building an ADU, I think I'd be interested in having some more information around where those construction costs estimates came from. I think what you're saying makes sense, and that might very much be the case, but I think there's some more context I'm interested in.
How would we get that context or understand where is this dialogue happening?
I think Christian was going to follow up and see what he could find out.
What was there?
Yeah, I would say if there's some modest amount of time, Christian, you can see if you can find information, and then I fall similar to Lee that I'm happy to trust that the 80,000 and the percentage of decreases was thought of by people who have insight here, and that, especially for us doing this law for the first time, that we can take that as good faith, and then if we discover other things along the way, can make future adjustments. But I'm also, again, fine for Christian to see if there's some further information that can be shared with us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll look through the legislative history. Sometimes there's sponsor memorandums or bill jackets that shed some light on the analysis that the state legislature uses when adopting certain values such as these.
I had one other question. Does anybody else have anything? I thought I read somewhere that it was saying, this is for the full 8 years where it cuts down 12.5% each year, and that it would be for that full year. But then I also was reading the 198-88 saying that it could be revoked. So I'm just wondering what would be a condition that would revoke it?
Yeah, so if they stop using the ADU for residential purposes, they convert it into a home gym or something like that, they would lose it. If they sold it to a third party, the property would lose it. This wouldn't be a revocation, but if they don't file their application again for renewal, they would lose it. Or if there's any discovery that there's been, something malfeasance with their application, they could also lose it. Once someone receives the exemption, it can only be revoked for a limited number of reasons, mainly if they sell the property or if they stop using it for residential purposes.
Okay. And then just to repeat again, that this is not for a new construction of an accessory unit. This is only for 5 years or older that are existing already.
It's only so the ADU itself can be new, but the building that it's contained in has to at least be 5 years old.
Oh, okay. That wasn't what I was hearing before. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ADU itself can be separate and new, but the construction of the primary residence has to be 5 years or older.
Or the building that it's located. So some people, they have detached accessory apartments. If they are building the accessory apartment in a detached building, such as, let's say, a garage, and that's going to be a new garage, even if their main home is older than 5 years, if that new garage with an ADU on the second floor is less than 5 years old, it would not be eligible. But if someone takes an existing garage and builds a second floor on it with an accessory apartment, and as long as the garage building itself is over 5 years old, they would be eligible.
Okay, so the building that the ADU is in must be 5 years or older.
Yes.
All right. I got it now.
Yeah. Sorry. There's the local law is a little confusing about it. It has kind of two ineligibilities based upon the time frame relative to the creation of the ADU.
And just one more question off that, and that is from 5 years from the date they apply?
It is, yeah, it's 5 years from the date of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
So there could be someone who creates an accessory apartment and then tries to apply for this exemption 5 years later. And at least with our research thus far, it does not appear that they would receive an exemption that is effective because they've been taxed with the new accessory apartment for 5 years. And so the exemption base would effectively be zero since it uses the prior year's tax assessment.
Oh.
So,
okay.
yeah, so that is one of the drawbacks, but these are set forth in the state law, and these are not provisions that the state legislature has opted to allow municipalities to amend.
Okay. All right, everybody's good?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to the last agenda item, DePeyster Avenue Drainage Replacement Project. And Chris will introduce this.
Yes, so we have in the works the removal and replacement of 450 linear feet of storm drainage pipe on DePeyster Avenue where we've had collapse, the road has been sinking. We originally were going to try to do this in-house, and it ended up being more of a job than we thought. So it was put out to bid. The bids came in this afternoon. We had 8 very competitive bids. We're analyzing those, and we'll be bringing you a suggested low bidder for next week's meeting. I just wanted to let you know we're queuing it up. We'd like to do it next week. We hope to certify that person by Friday, so when the packet is done, it will have a memo from our city attorney. There was a clear low bidder. We need to just check references and make sure that their math was correct, and they've complied with all the parts of the bid that are required.
Sorry, Chris, you might have already said this. Where along DePeyster is this?
No, I didn't. Thank you. It starts at Hidden Brook, and then it goes 450 feet towards Violet Drive, near Jessen Pond.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
okay.
So it's right along the new pollinator patch that the rec department worked with.
Yeah.
And can you say more about sort of what the underlying issue that this construction is addressing? I'm just curious because I know there are runoff and drainage considerations from Hidden Brook into that area.
It was the collapsing of the existing pipe.
Okay.
So the existing storm, I think there's a 15-inch diameter pipe there, and it was collapsing in places and being undermined, and the road started sinking, and we realized it's a longer section than initially thought.
Okay. And
So we'll be replacing that with a very durable HTPE, which is like a polyethylene pipe, and it basically won't change the drainage system. It just is replacing the pipe that conveys that drainage to
Is
the
there
stormwater system.
any consideration for increasing the size of that or increasing the capacity for?
I don't think the engineer thought that was warranted. It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't really an issue of the capacity. It was an issue of the condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it more everything around the pipe that kind of wore it away from the water?
I'm sorry. I don't know more than that. I didn't see when I know the road was opened at one point. I didn't see the condition. I just understand that we were losing the integrity of the existing pipe.
I'm just thinking, I think probably you're thinking the same thing, just will it happen again if we flood similar off the mountain?
No, it's not from the action of the flooding. It was from the collapse of the pipe. So the water goes into the pipe through a storm drain. The storm drain Usually these pipes then lead to another storm drain and then to some of the larger pipes that intercept it. I'm guessing that's probably on Washington Avenue, and that convey it to either the Fishkill Creek or to the Hudson River, or Clark's Land, as he said.
Is the hope to begin the construction this year or as soon as possible?
Yeah, we would like to begin construction at the end of the month. And then repave that so that we have a nice solid base for the winter.
Great, thank you.
So are you looking that this will be on the agenda for the next council meeting?
Yes.
With the bids that with the lowest bid after you get, after you
Yeah, so
review
you'll
everything?
have our typical memo from the city engineer, John Russo, explaining, we had 8 bids. This is the low bidder. We checked references. We confirmed that, they understand the scope of work for the number that they've offered, and they have everything that's necessary. Usually, we have to check that they had the proper bid bond in to cover the bid. And again, I think we have, if the low bidder isn't there, we have 3 other, we had good bids. I mean, we had 3 or 4 that were below the engineer's estimate. So, it appears that people are hungry for work right now.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like an important project, and I understand the timeliness, and I anticipate that it will be an easy vote next week. I think I am, just because it came up, this construction project happened to come up in this area below Hidden Brook. Curious to have a conversation at some point about how we're managing water runoff, especially as with climate change, we're going to experience more and more unusual weather events, and make sure that we're thinking through our infrastructure being ready to meet that.
Well, I think everything that we look at, we look through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
The project coming up at Milzinga Dam next year is to raise the spillway to allow different capacity. Everything we're doing at the sewer treatment plant is to add resilience. We're trying to address I&I issues so we don't have a lot of water inundating it. So as our city engineer is aware of that. When we see things that are issues, we do upgrade them. In 2021, Pocket Road flooded out, and we rebuilt that with new drainage, with doubling the depth of pavement so that it would hold up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, we have some issues where drainage is a big deal. This is not one of them.
Okay.
I mean, I would say Jessen Pond is more concerning to me, and we have spent a lot of time cleaning out that culvert to make sure that if you have 2 inches of rain, it doesn't back up into the neighborhood.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about Jessen Pond, and I don't know enough about how this runoff system works, if they're connected at all, if it's a totally different system.
That dry brook into Jessen is an important part of managing the flow down the mountain so
Yeah.
that it doesn't inundate Violet Drive and the other piece, which the name is escaping me, but we just
Yeah.
call it Jessen Pond neighborhood.
Yeah, the Robin Lane,
Right, yes.
yeah.
No, I think this is again, we're just trying to replace what was there,
Okay.
get it in good shape.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? No? All right. Next Monday is our next city council meeting. That is September 15th at 7 p.m. And that is when the public will be able to speak for up to 3 minutes. And I'll
Pam,
take-
may I make one quick announcement,
Yes.
please? I just wanted to let the public know that we are going to be striping Fishkill and Teller Avenue during the night, starting this Wednesday and going through next Wednesday. The reason that's done is, of course, to do it when there's minimal traffic, and also it gives the striping time to cure before the roads reopen. So I just wanted to let you know that's happening. It's an important next step in finishing that federal aid project. Thank you.
thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And Lee, were you part of that?
Yes, when I turn my audio on, yes.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you. Have a good
Christian.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Christian.
evening.
See you on Monday.
Thank you, Natalie. I don't think
I
you're
think
still there.
Natalie.
Thank you.